Good morning and welcome back to another review here on Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be checking out Superman Lost Issue 4 by Christopher Priest and Carlos Pagulayan. Superman's odyssey through space picks up the pace a little bit more this issue as we join Clark back on Earth after his return and how he's not really acclimating well, having spent decades in space and in another life, and it's causing concern from Lois, who has to remind Clark that there is lots of air on Earth and he doesn't need to hold his breath like he did for most of those years. Priest doesn't go fully into it, but just the concept alone that Clark had to hold his breath for days and weeks and months and maybe even years is so terrifying, since just try holding your breath for a few seconds, for 30 seconds. You can feel your body starting to panic because there's no air getting in or anything, and lots of small changes start to happen. So now imagine if you were a superhuman and you have to do that and have to keep that going for just days and weeks and months. It would be utterly traumatizing to have to train your body to do that, and Priest conveys that really well with a few sentences and references to it throughout the book. Priest also works a lot on Clark and his costume this issue, establishing Mark Kent made it as it usually happens in his origin, and adds a kind of unique spin to what it represents, tying it to Clark's drive to help people and how the costume is a sign and reason that people are going to be safe, and that's what people know is going to save people when they see that costume. Thanks to its place in the story, I love the idea that Clark desperately wants to get it back, since this time he's the one who needs saving, and the suit is a sort of security blanket for him, not only to remind him of his Kryptonian heritage but also his earthly heritage too, and it's kind of a sign of him not wanting to let go of who he is lest he forget who he is. Carlos Pagulayan's beautiful artwork is fantastic throughout here, but really shines in these panels with Clark finding the suit in the darkness or space. There's this desperation and anger you never really see with Superman, and Carlos captures it perfectly with a white suited bearded Clark who looks a little bit older than you usually see. You can tell like there's stress in him, and it's taking a toll on him, and I like that he's painted into this wonderfully dark yet still colorful starry backgrounds. He really stands out in that white suit. Clark's journey jumps ahead a little, and we see after 5 years he has built his own farm on the world of Kansas, which he returned to after losing Marcus and his luggage. I'm honestly a little surprised we ventured back to this world and back to the story of Kansas, since the book really felt like a road trip of sorts, with each issue being something new for Clark to experience, a new culture, some new aliens, some new type problem. But I'm glad we did return, since the world was interesting and there was definitely a leftover plot point there of something really off about that world, and Clark realizing that there is something off about it. This affords Priest the opportunity to explore the world more and get to learn a little bit more about the Republic and the Arcasians, and how liberty and freedoms are actually the things preventing the world from prospering, since while the Republic could use its tech to help the people on the surface and get them out of their squalor and their toxic workplaces and toxic living conditions, they would refuse, since it would breach their freedoms to enjoy their social media and VR devices and live in their own little world. It's quite interesting of a conundrum for Superman to find himself in, and it's made worse by the toxic city of Newark having been sold off to the Contrastiado, the little orange alien guys who saved Clark back in the first issue, and it puts him at odds with them as well, since now Clark refuses to abandon these people like he did before, and it leads him to team with a Green Lantern who has arrived to see what's going on the planet. The inclusion of a Green Lantern should be quite interesting, especially since she could really get Clark home very fast, since Priest has made it known earlier on in the issue, the transwarp, beams and everything that the Lanterns would use to ferry the Justice League to far off missions in the universe, and he's made that clear that they can do that. So maybe that was sort of like a Chekhov's gun where he's going to explore that, and being that there is another 6 issues, I don't think that's going to happen right away, and there's going to be some sort of problem that they'll have to deal with, obviously. And if what the previews are anything to go by, I'm thinking there might be some sort of romantic relationship between Clark and this Lantern, which definitely piques my interest. I'm intrigued to see what Priest is going to do, giving Clark a new relationship and sort of getting to explore that, and how that's going to be different from Lois. Superman Lost continues to be a fantastic and unique adventure for the Man of Steel, pitting him against some creative problems and new characters while taking the hero's established core traits and puts an interesting new spin on them, showing them from some new angles and some really interesting angles as well. I'm going to give this issue a wholehearted 10 out of 10, so give this series a go if you aren't already.